Hello, everyone. Welcome to week one of Sacred Healing University. I'm your professor, Reverend Saaja L, certified metaphysical healing practitioner. This is module one, elementary healing. In this module, we will be going over the fundamentals of healing, what it is, why it's necessary, and how to go about it. But first, I would like to take a moment to discuss what is metaphysics. Metaphysics is the science of the interconnectedness of our minds, spirits, and bodies with the totality of the universe. It is the science of being the creator of your reality. That literally means that everything and everyone that you experience in your life is because you wrote them into your story. Even the things that seem out of your control exist because of who you are internally. Now, let's move on to healing. What is that? Healing is the act of consciously taking the steps necessary to transform your past experiences into a higher purpose, transmuting your pain into energy that allows you to manifest whatever it is that you want on purpose. Now, with that being said, when it comes to healing, you have got to learn to be intentional. In everything that you do, you have to mean what you say and say what you mean, because the universe is responding to that. The universe will also respond to your negligence. And negligence looks like when you flow with the things that happen rather than control the things that happen. It's like realizing you're on the way to being triggered by something and just letting it happen anyway. When you are healing, you literally have to seize the moment. You have to acknowledge that you are being triggered, and you have to make the conscious decision to react to it differently. Rev, what you mean by that? Okay, I'm glad you asked. So, when I say your past equals your present, when it comes to your emotional pain and your childhood trauma, all of this is controlled by the inner child. You are literally reparenting the child that you were when you had these experiences the first time. Now, many people might say, I don't have any childhood trauma. Nothing significant happened to me as a child that made me this way. Oh, yes, it did. I guarantee you it did. That time that you felt like crying and your mama told you to shut up, shut your mouth, and you couldn't express yourself, that became a pain point for you. Abandonment wounds, not being heard, being neglected. With the impressionality of human beings, not even just little children, so really it doesn't matter how old you were. Emotionally, you haven't matured beyond the point in time where these things happen. You've suppressed it over time, and it is stored somewhere in your body. Somewhere in your anatomy lies these very experiences. So, one of the concepts of metaphysics is getting rid of the concept of time. Some of us know that, some of us are unfamiliar with that. The past, present, and the future are happening simultaneously. When you are triggered, you are time traveling. Time traveling happens in the mind. That's what astral projection is about, but we'll talk about that in a higher level course. When you are time traveling, when you are triggered, what is happening is your mind is taking you back to that very moment where you first felt that pain. That pain tells a story. That's why it gets stored in your body. Store E. It is stored energy. Now, your triggers can show up in your body in different ways. It could be a headache, it could be back pain, it could be shoulder or neck tension, it could be heart palpitations. So anything that your body is trying to tell you will come in those moments where you are reliving an experience and your mind takes you back to that setting and is trying to push you towards responding to it differently. Being triggered is one of the biggest revelations that you can have about yourself. In those moments where you feel your body's reaction to the external stimuli, and you are being taken back to the time where you first lived that experience, and your brain is still in that fight or flight survival mode. Because you'll notice in these moments, you'll instantly have a reaction. Those are the moments where we say, I just couldn't control it. Before I knew it, this happened. Before I knew it, I had said this. Yeah. So you went back in time to the setting when it first happened, and your mind is giving you the opportunity to choose differently. That is what the trigger is telling you. Choose differently this time, because otherwise you're going to get stuck in a cycle. That is how the patterns get created. The patterns that occur in our life are due to our pain. Your pain forms your patterns. Now, because the inner child is the center for all of this and is the reason for why all of this is happening, and time doesn't exist because our past is our present and future, then the narrative that we give ourselves and people around us of it being, that's just how I do, that's just who I am, is also an illusion, because that child is stuck in survival mode, right? That's why when we come across similar occurrences, we go back to that time when it first happened. So you are, in fact, now we like to affirm ourselves and say, I am not defined by my environment. I am not defined by my past. But until you make the decision to be intentional about choosing differently and doing better for yourself, making better decisions to manifest the abundance and other things that we desire to attract into our lives, you are defined until you defy. So until you make the conscious effort, until you actually do the work on purpose to change your life for the better, your path will keep you in this cycle. Those patterns will keep showing up. Those men will keep walking into your life and out of it. Those friends will keep stabbing you in the back. Those workplaces will forever be toxic. Don't matter where you go or who you go with, you're going to be stuck in the product of your past cycles. Now, that's not to say that we are genetically predisposed to having these painful experiences or making these unconscious choices in our lives. Yes, a lot of what we come to experience is because of the pain that was passed down through the womb. And that is why I deal a lot in the ancestral healing space. And for those of you who went on my website and did some digging, you probably saw ancestral healing as one of the services that I provide. Now, once we get into the higher level courses, I do dive into ancestral healing and the principles of what it is and how to do it. But until you get to the point of tapping into your ancestry and healing your entire bloodline backwards, we got to deal with this. We got to deal with that inner baby girl. We got to deal with that inner child. Now, here's how we tie it all together. The pain point that we identified earlier as the point in time in our youth when we felt the least safe triggered us to develop what's called attachment styles. Now, I know everyone has heard of the anxious attachment style, but there are actually 4 attachment styles, and they kind of build off of each other. The healthiest attachment style is known as the secure attachment style. I don't mind, you don't matter. I'm good if you here, I'm good if you go. We good either way. All right. Then you have the disorganized attachment style, which kind of straddles the fence between secure attachment and anxious and avoidant. Now, disorganized attachment style is something like, well, I want to be intimate with you. I want the closeness and the affection, but I don't want to open up. I don't want to be vulnerable. because I fear being rejected. I fear being perceived or judged. So once we get to anxious attachment style, that is like the emotional crackhead, right? That is the gimme, 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 please don't leave. Now that comes from trauma that was induced by some form of abandonment or neglect or rejection when we wanted to be seen and we wanted to be valued, but it just was not given to us. The avoidant attacher is the nonchalant, I'm good. That's the dude that you want to be all over you, but he's so unbothered. Most of the avoidants are what we like to call narcissists. However, these are not always unhealthy. These 4 attachment styles all have their purpose and they all have their place in our lives at different points in time. Don't totally disregard the anxious attacher, because being anxiously attached doesn't necessarily mean that you're traumatized and you're emotionally immature. Being anxiously attached can also be, now, let's go back. Once we make the decision to be intentional about our healing, we start to self-reflect on the things, patterns that take place in our life. The anxious attachment is when you need to reel back yourself and say, why? What about this situation is making me feel insecure? Internalize it first, and then look at how it's projecting outside of you. How is that person failing to reciprocate what you are giving to them? Okay, now that brings us to the root cause analysis. We have to value, prioritize processing over suppressing. Like I said earlier, this is not something that you can just out of sight, out of mind it. Time heals all wounds and it'll eventually go away. Absolutely not. Process over suppress means that you are proactively working to transition out of the unhealthy or toxic pattern that you used to experiencing. We, through this root cause analysis, have to acknowledge when we are living in a state of illusion, when we are giving false meaning to what we feel. Oh, this person doesn't value me because I'm not valuable. This person is rejecting me. The situation made me feel rejected because I'm not good enough. That's an illusion. That's an illusion, and it was created by that inner child of yours who is still fighting to survive. They are still fighting for their safety. So what your mind is going to do with that inner child at the seat, at the center, it's going to tell you these stories. It's going to tell you, oh, it's easier to see it this way because that makes us feel safer and more confident in what we're going through. Because if we don't recognize it, that means it's unsafe. And going through this whole stage, this whole journey of healing gives you discomfort because you've never done it before. It's new to you. It is the unknown. And therefore, that inner child identifies it as unsafe. Now, what that's going to make you do is it's going to make you start to reinforce that illusion, right? This is where we get to talking about mama issues and daddy issues. We as women tend to have a pattern in the men that we choose, in the men that we commit to and have children to, because like they tell us, and men tell the truth, they lie, but they are our biggest reflections. We have to start paying attention to what they are directly and indirectly telling us, because once you start to heal and be intentional and you start self-reflecting and understanding what is going on in your metaphysical anatomy, understanding what your spirit is trying to tell you through your triggers, you are going to start reinforcing the illusion. You are going to, if you've ever heard of the nature versus nurture concept, nature versus nurture, some things you're born with, genetically predisposed, you carry it through the womb. That is how your life turns out. Some things make you a product of your environment. Now, this is by choice. This is by design. What we do when we are triggered and we're experiencing a pattern that makes us feel unsafe, but we're comfortable with it because it's what we're used to, and we tell ourselves this story, this false story, we are going to subconsciously choose the same pattern, the same response, reaction, situation, relationship, workplace, whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life. Because we take our nurture, our environment, and we turn it into our nature. We let it rewrite our DNA. And that is how it gets stored in the womb. That is how it gets passed down to your children and the rest of your children and their children for generations to come. This is how it happens. Now, we give ourselves a story to make us comfortable with our triggers when we're afraid to face them, when we're afraid to choose differently. Now, that's okay. However, the reinforcement is going to keep you in a cycle that's going to further disconnect you from that inner child. So what I want you to do for your homework, I want you to identify your pain point. When did you start experiencing these things? How did you feel in that moment? Then I want you to rewrite that story. What you should have done, what you could have done, and what you are going to do the next time it happens, because the universe is going to test you on this. Once you make a decision to change your life, the universe is going to respond to that. I said that in part 1, and I mean it. That is exactly, you have to prepare to respond to that. Now, once you rewrite that story, in your claim of what you're going to do, that is going to be your future statement. So we're going to identify the pain point. We are going to rewrite the pain point, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and will. And then that is going to be our future statement. This is how I handle situations that make me feel the way that I felt on this day. Then I want you to proactively practice mindfulness. I want you to acknowledge every time you feel a little discomfort, doesn't matter what it is. You being angry, frustrated, ashamed, sad, confused, whatever it is, I want you to acknowledge it, and I want you to thank it for teaching you how to choose better. Once you start to show gratitude to your pain points and your triggers, and understanding why you are living the experiences that you live, how these things are projecting outside of you in the form of relationships, workplace, money, or anything that you have going on in your life. I want you to be your own accountability team. Once that is done, we're going to do what's called a quantum leap. So like I told you, your past is your present, is your future. Once we do this, once we do all the things that were covered in this module, and we understand what is going on, and we internalize and we make the conscious decision to be better versions of ourselves, we are going to go back into our minds. We're going to intentionally time travel to our futures, because we already went back and loved on that inner child. We already made them aware that it's okay. You're safe now. Mama got it from here. And once we revisit that inner child, we are going to step out of the past, go beyond the past into our futures, meet with our future selves, and thank ourselves for guiding us towards the path to align with the life that she lives now. Because she and you are one and the same, whether your environment reflects that right now or not. And that is part of metaphysics, and that is how you create your reality. Now that we're done with this module, since you've made it this far, it's only right that you show your appreciation and your participation in class. So your participation grade, what is going to count you present, is if you go into the comments right now and type, "I change my mind." And so it is. I'll see you next week.